Edward Gopher, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, we're delighted to have you in Access in this current iteration of how Access is trying to keep it lit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so excited to finally have a home and even happier that it's an Access, so thank you so much.
No worries, do you want to gel up and we'll get cracking?
Absolutely, have to... Oh god, it really does. Loads of it.
This is why the blue roll is here.
Gotcha,
there you
gotcha,
go.
Thank you.
The glamour, right?
Oh yeah, so much glamour. So where to?
So we're going to go downstairs. I'll let you take the lift and I will meet you downstairs.
Brilliant, thanks so much,
No
Lee.
worries, bye.
On tonight's episode of Stage Door Live, we'll be talking with Owen Carrick, representing the National Campaign for the Arts. Owen will then be joined by panellists Peter Daly, Andrew Macklin, Neil Murray and Niamh Crahur to focus on moving forward as individuals and as a sector. Thanks to the support of Dublin City Council and Access Ballymun, we're broadcasting to you live for the first time from the Access Media Hub.
Live from Dublin and around Ireland, theatre takes centre stage. Streaming live and focusing on the issues, the art, the craft, the makers. News, hot topics and artist features. From TheatreMaker.ie.
Hello and welcome to our new version of our flagship broadcast, Stage Door Live, broadcasting from the Access Media Hub at Access Ballymun. For those who may have followed us from March 2020 until October 2020, you'll notice a few things have changed, but our purpose hasn't, which is to bring you the latest hot topics, artist features, and conversations at the forefront of the sector. Tonight we're joined by new TheatreMaker team members. For those viewers who have been with us since the beginning, you'll meet a few new faces of the team. But don't worry, we'll be introducing them properly in just a moment. But for now, let's take a look at the top news items from Irish theatre. This week with Sue, our new host. Take it away, Sue.
Thank you, Janice. A lot has happened the last few months. Let's recap for a moment. A number of announcements were recently made regarding the phased reopening of the country. This is largely due to the steady increase in vaccines administered. As of last Sunday, fully vaccinated numbers stand at 445,561, while a further 713,522 have received the first dose. As of today, people aged 58 are being invited to register at vaccine.hse.ie. The restrictions currently in place allow travel within your county, are up to 20 kilometers from your home, and 2 households are permitted to meet outdoors away from their gardens. With the lockdown measures slowly lifting, museums, galleries, and libraries will be allowed to reopen from next Monday. Sean Rainbird, Director of National Gallery of Ireland, commented, "We are very happy to be open again after months of closure. These extraordinary times have reinforced the importance and the value of the National Gallery of Ireland." After months of staying at home, we know that people are craving culture and live experiences, and we are delighted to welcome our visitors back. To coincide with the reopening, the gallery will open the exhibition New Perspectives as a show comprising of acquisitions made by the gallery between 2011-2020. The latest exhibition will allow the public to view many new acquisitions to the National Collection for the first time, without which some of the art showcased in New Perspectives would not have come to be at the gallery. Details are unclear when it comes to the reopening of theaters and cinemas. However, with Minister Martin announcing last week in a press release that we could look forward to them reopening in June. The Irish government has stated work is continuing on a number of other issues in preparation for the coming months, including preparation for the safe reopening of cinemas and theatres in June, subject to public health advice. In a statement on 29 April, Minister Martin said she is delighted to confirm that we are looking at the safe reopening of cinemas and theatres in June. Fergal Hines, Executive Director of Druid, said, "We look forward to the reopening of theatres and other cultural buildings as soon as it is safe to do so. We are grateful to Minister Martin for her support of arts organizations and arts workers throughout the pandemic. During this time, Druid has strived to create new work and share that work with audiences by whatever means possible, be it outdoors or online." National Campaign for the Arts has commended Minister Catherine Martin and her government colleagues for their efforts to support the arts, cultural and live entertainment sector in reopening, while also bringing up specific questions and concerns. More on that later in the show. The number of people claiming the pandemic unemployment payment fell below 400,000 for the first time this year. According to the Department of Social Protection, the PUP payment is currently planned to be phased out during the summer months, and some individuals will be transferred to other schemes. Last month, Minister Martin announced that there would be further funding of nearly €127,000 by Culture Ireland for the promotion of Irish arts globally in 2021. The funding is to support 23 projects presenting Irish film, literature, music, theatre, and the visual arts worldwide. Announcing the awards, Minister Martin said, "It is vital that we support our artists as they work in new and innovative ways through these unprecedented times. I'm delighted that this support through Culture Ireland will help many artists continue to present their work online, achieving global reach at festivals from the US to the UK and from Europe to Asia throughout March." Minister Martin announced a €50 million suite of measures to support the live performance sector early March of this year. The Irish Society of Stage and Screen Designers have been producing a new podcast this year called Stage Left. Last Thursday, Irish Street Arts Circus and Spectacle Network had their AGM. They reported a large increase of 23% in membership in 2020. Jonah McGreevy of Lucy Smokes was elected the board, while Nicholas Kavanagh, Catherine Bourne, and Elisa Galleroso stepped down. Isaacs also reported a 4-time increase in the number of successful applications in its related disciplines. Sad news last Saturday at the passing of Kildare actor Tom Hickey. A very successful actor, Hickey was best known for his role as Benji Riordan in RTE's TV series The Riordans, which he played for 16 years. Hickey trained at the Stanislavski studio while working as a cameraman for RTE. President Michael D. Higgins said in RTE interview that Tom was on a restless pursuit of perfection and that it was a pleasure to know him. Last week, the 93rd Academy Awards ceremony, presented by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, honored the best films of 2020 and early 2021. Animated feature film Wolf Walkers by Cartoon Saloon was nominated for Best Animated Feature. It was the Kilkenny-based studio's 4th Oscar nomination in the category. Finally, we have a small selection of the great many of the grants, funding, residencies and opportunities currently open for application. The Arts Council has a number of grants open for applications currently on their website. Some notable ones are the Amateur and Voluntary Practice Pilot Scheme in the areas of music, theatre and musical theatre with a maximum award of €125,000, the Scheme for Touring and Dissemination of Work, and the Capacity Building Support Scheme. Applications are open to form part of the Culture Ireland delegations. Applications to their next round of grant applications is also the 1st of June. An opportunity for performing artists in the East and Southeast region of Ireland and European partners. Creation 2122 has opened applications to its bursary. Deadline for applications is 19 May 2021. In Northern Ireland, the applications are now open to the Lottery Project Funding 2021-2022. The Arts Council intends for this program to assist organizations in delivering arts projects which contribute to the growth of arts in the community for new and existing audiences and which reflect the diversity of Northern Ireland's society and culture. These are the top stories for today. You can catch the full rundown on Irish Theatre this week, Monday at 7 p.m. As always, we want to hear from you. What news items did we miss? What do you want to hear more about? Send us your press releases and suggestions to news@TheatreMaker.ie or slide into our DMs on social media.
I'm not an entirely unfamiliar face here on Stage Door Live, we'd now like to take a moment to introduce our newest TheatreMaker crew. Let's get to know them a little bit better. So, hi, welcome guys. Hi. Sue, with Irish Theatre this week, during our first run of Stage Door Live, the news show was one of the most popular segments. So we've decided to give you more of what you love in the form of a weekly show dedicated to theatre news. Every Monday at 7, tune in to find out what's happening from the theatre world. From local and international funding and residency opportunities and coming events to the latest information on the easing of COVID restrictions, Irish Theatre this week has its finger on the pulse of the theatre sector. Sue, would you like to just tell us a little bit about you and Irish Theatre this week and what you're going to bring to the table? And
you basically summed it all up. But my name is Sue Ocak. I am from Turkey and I just graduated from English Language and Literature last year. And now I'm doing Masters in Journalism and Media Communications in Griffith College in Dublin. And I'm really happy to be here and presenting the news. It's a new vibe, a new atmosphere for me. Yeah, it's great, basically.
Fantastic. So you're going to be here delivering the news with us every week, and you're doing a master's at the same time?
Yeah, that's true.
How are you managing your time? Are you sleeping and eating?
I don't know. I lost track of time for a while now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue. I can't wait to see you every Monday to see what you have to bring to the table. As well as Irish Theatre this week, we're going to have Conversations in the Spotlight, which is a series of interviews. And Sean, I'm going to throw to you for this one. Can you tell us a little bit more about Conversations in the Spotlight?
Of course. Conversations in the Spotlight is a series of interviews with theatre makers and theatre practitioners discussing their lives, their careers, and their kind of approach to their craft and their practice. Kind of hope to have a wide variety of theatre makers, from actors and directors to sound designers, lighting designers, costume designers, property managers, venue managers, the list goes on and on. Literally anyone who's involved with theatre, we're hoping to get them into the room and talk to them about their craft.
You just want to know everything.
Everything we possibly can. Just very invasive questions. Really
So what kind of questions are we talking about? What are you hoping to kind of figure out in this? What's your aim with the show, do you think?
I mean, I know I'm not really speaking just for myself, but I mean, everyone misses theatre. Of course, we miss the magic of sitting in the dark with strangers and imagining worlds together. But one of the things I really miss, apart from that, is those moments after the show, the moments when you're in the foyer and chatting with people after the thing, whether you're working on the show or you're attending the show, they're kind of coming together. And then, of course, the conversations with friends, and a good name for a book, that, Conversations with Friends. But conversations with friends in the pub afterwards, talking shite and talking about
the after show drink, right? That's what we've all been missing.
Desperately craving the last few months, but it would be. It's not possible to recreate that magic, obviously, with the live show. But we hope to do something in that vein to try and maybe fill the void that's been left.
Fantastic. So if there's anybody out there who falls into, all of the jobs in theatre that you want to examine, should they get in touch with TheatreMaker?
Sure.
If they're interested?
We'll be reaching out to people, but if you have a story to tell and you want to come and talk to us, please get in touch.
No job is off limits here. Sean wants to know everything from everybody.
If you work in the bar of a theatre, if you're in the box office of literally anything associated in the theatre industry, we're happy to talk to you.
Amazing, fantastic. So just for my sake and our viewers, because guys, just to remind everybody, this is the first time we've actually, me and Sean and Sue anyway, have been together and have worked together, and we've all been working remotely for the past year. So for my sake and the sake of our viewers, Sean, would you just tell us a little bit more about you yourself?
That is one of my least favourite topics to talk about myself. But I will do my best. I am Sean Roper Nolan. I am was studied in Trinity College. I did the drama and classics undergrad. I didn't study drama and classics. I read drama and classics.
Oh, the notions!
The notions, the fierce notions, sitting upstairs in the bus kind of notions, that kind of notions. And since then I did a master's in MPhil in Theatre and Performance, also in the Samuel Beckett Centre in Trinity. And since then I've kind of been doing some freelance directing work, musical directing, and kind of anything really. I mean,
like all of us,
days.
you have to be a jack of all trades in this country.
It's kind of necessary if you want to like do anything.
Your parents must have been so happy when you told them what you wanted to study,
Yeah,
right?
they were delighted on the CAO putting down drama and classics. Like, oh, are you sure you don't want to do medicine? Are you sure you don't want to be a lawyer? But they are both in the industry themselves, so they kind of know. As a career, it's a tough one. But
absolutely,
if you do what you love, you'll never be bored.
Well, I mean, this is it. Nothing they could say would discourage you from pursuing.
And Lord knows they tried.
Yeah. I think any of us would say the same. I would say the same if my own kids wanted to, go in this direction. I'd be like, are you sure?
Are you sure that you're sure that you're sure that you're sure? Yeah. Really
well, yeah, you can't do this job if you don't love it. I mean, it's just
I think that was
too hard.
Something said to me on the very first day of my undergraduate was, if there is any other profession or any other thing you can do with your life, you need to do it. If you can only work in theatre if it is the only thing you can do with your life, and you need to be working in it. And there's some truth in that, I think.
Fantastic. Well, I can honestly say for myself and for all of the TheatreMaker team, we are so excited to have you here, and not just here personally and having people in the room with me. that is amazing. But also just in general, to be able to expand the team this way, to be able to bring more amazing Irish theatre content to the public and to everybody out there is such an exciting and fantastic thing. So thank you both for being here today, for indulging us all and introducing yourselves and your shows. And I cannot wait to see what you bring to the table.
We will see you Mondays at 7 p.m.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
Thank
you. A big thank you, by the way, to everyone who has supported us from the very beginning and each step along the way. For those who may have missed it, we've launched our store filled with Oscoelga products, and all proceeds from these sales will go back directly into the work that we're doing here. So please consider supporting us. We're posting a link in the chat now, and it will also be in the description after the show. I would recommend the hoodies and the mugs. We've come a long way since April 2020, and since none of us can visit the hairdressers, we've collected some highlights and lowlights from the past year. God knows there were plenty of those. Please enjoy, because we know we certainly did. Now joined by our first in-person guest, Owen Carrick, Steering Committee member of the National Campaign for the Arts. Owen, it's a pleasure to have you joining us here in studio. What do you think?
It's great. Looks lovely. Very, very nicely put together. Well done.
Thank you very much. Definitely a labour of love for sure. So let's get on to the questions, shall we? So reading recent statements coming from government quarters, it seems that many of your goals from the 13-point plan are at the very least being addressed, if not directly met. So do you think it's now a matter of applying pressure on those points to the relevant bodies, or are you moving on to the next things on your agenda?
So it's a mixture of things. So what we're looking at, what we're primarily gearing up towards at the moment is kind of getting the sector open and kind of getting a clear timeline for how people and artists and arts workers are able to start to work towards that. Then we're looking at the UBI pilot, which the Minister is looking towards. And then what are our main things? Oh yeah, so like it's basically how are we going to get open? What's the UBI and how's that going to happen? And then what's next year and how do we keep the sector buoyant?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are all conversations that we're all having at the moment, and certainly your statement in response to things does bring up some of those issues, like the need for a clear timeline and that kind of thing. So what are your priorities? Like, what's your number one priority now as we're moving forward?
Right, well, I mean, so we've got a sense of when some of the buildings are opening. So May 10th, we've got galleries and other spaces like that, outdoor spaces opening. But what we're not clear on yet are when are theatres and cinemas opening, when are music venues opening, and we need to have a kind of sense of what the timeline of that is, because if we don't have that, then like realistically, artists and arts workers need to be preparing, developing, creating that work now in order to be ready when those venues and stuff open up. So if we don't have a sense of what the timeline is, the industry isn't going to be ready. So that's the primary goal at the moment in terms of getting a clear, actionable timeline that we can act on.
Yeah, of course, because there's no point in saying, well, yeah, you can open all theatres on the whatever of June, but we've nothing ready.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's no point telling us we can open stuff in June. Yeah. We need to know now so we can get ready for June.
Yeah, so I suppose it's that really, isn't it? Getting clarification. Can we get into rehearsal rooms? Can we get actors together safely, obviously, to get ready for the reopening?
Yeah, but it's like things need to be designed, things need to be, like, marketing needs to happen, things need to be sold, the audience needs to know about it, like, all of that takes time, and at the moment we don't have any clear timeline of when that's going to happen, so it's all a bit unclear and a bit general and a bit vague.
So how do we get the clarification there? I mean,
so yeah, sure. So we get clarification basically through talking with NFID and talking with the department at the moment. So we've got a meeting this week with Catherine Martin, and we're going to start asking those questions and start to get clear clarification on dates and timelines, and so look, we're looking at venues opening at some point this year for sure, but like, are they opening to 50? Like, when does that go up as vaccinations as the vaccination number goes up? Like, are the venues being able to open up more in correspondence with that? Like, so kind of trying to get clarity from the minister, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And go back to something you actually said earlier about the universal basic income, you touched on that already, and we know like certain things about that, and obviously we all broadly welcome that this is something that we're even actually talking about.
Sure.
What are, specifically around the UBI, what do you think are the biggest points around that as we're talking about it and it coming into being?
Sure. So, I mean, like, what we're looking at is, what we're talking about and what the government end up doing are potentially two very different things. What we are looking for is a UBI pilot, which is a universal basic income, with the artists and arts workers as a test group. We're looking at a time frame of starting kind of January 2022, and we are looking for a rough length of somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and that it would be opt-in for artists and arts workers, so that those who don't opt in are the what's it called, the people who don't have it, so they so like You can. They're the
Like a control group.
The control group.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so they're the control group, and we're looking at, so like what we do know is we're basing it kind of off the PUP as an idea. So we know that at its height, there were 14,000 artists and art workers using the PUP. So we're looking at that as the basic number. We're looking at 350, which was the number that the government decided was the figure you need to live on. So 350 seems like a clear, good, reasonable base point to start on. And yeah, and that's what we're looking at. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And, you know, what we're looking for is, like, we're aiming high. Like, we're looking to, like, get the best possible outcome of this pilot. And in order to do that, like, that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for best possible outcome.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're going to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, you know, what we're also looking to do is to build on pilots from elsewhere in the world. So, like, there are things that we can try and achieve in this that hasn't been done elsewhere. Like, the duration is a big thing. So we're looking at 3 to 5 years because realistically, it's in the second and third and fourth year that the benefits really start to show. So, you know, the sense of the participants psychologically getting the benefits of that, us being able to, like, the government and whoever is whoever are measuring, because, like, we're looking at, you know, quarterly measurements. So, like, every 2.5 months, 3 months, we're looking at measurements. So, like, they're all the things that we're hoping to achieve with this. And we're currently talking to all the political parties to, I guess, see what people are afraid of, or like what how the narrative needs to be constructed, and like what are the questions that people have, so that when the government start to basically package what the pilot will be, that we're really clear on what the pros and cons are, and we're really clear on what will work and what won't work, and everyone is on board. So we're looking for kind of cross-party investment in it.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, the NCFA predates the pandemic and was created out of a need to address some serious issues within the industry. As we tentatively move past this pandemic, hopefully, what do you think the biggest challenges are facing us? Have certain things improved, gotten worse? Where do you think the priorities are going to be moving forward? Sure.
So, I mean, the NCFA came about in 2010 after the huge cuts that happened in 2009. And it's a voluntary campaign. None of us on the steering committee, no one involved at all gets any money. So, like, it's a volunteer grassroots campaign. And it has always been, it's been fighting for the better conditions of artists and arts workers on the island of Ireland. So the issues that we're addressing kind of haven't changed. You know, it's slowly been getting better. Like, we're looking for increased funding to the Arts Council. We're looking for increased funding to Culture Ireland. Like, you know, if you look at our pre-budget submissions, which we publish every year, you know, like, what we do every year is check in with the sector. So we hold kind of big town hall meetings. We'll be holding one on the 12th of May. So, like, look out for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so we check in with the sector, we get a sense, we talk to the sector, we talk to the resource organisations that represent the various different art forms in the sector. And then what we do is we kind of see what needs to, like, what the problems are now, and then we start to construct our pre-budget submissions. So, you know, like, the problems that are happening in the sector are the things that we're talking about. And if something gets solved, then, you know, we move on to the next thing.
Absolutely. I think there are certain things within the sector, challenges that, you know, existed before the pandemic have actually been compounded by the pandemic. Absolutely, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, just conditions, like, you know, conditions for artists, pay scales, like ITI or Irish Theatre Institute at the moment are doing a new pay scale survey because artists aren't getting paid properly, either our arts workers, you know. The pandemic has absolutely identified and compounded a number of the issues that the sector is struggling with, for sure.
And I mean, you know, recently with Catherine Martin, you know, coming out and talking about establishing this oversight group, which is going to be tasked with carrying out these recommendations from the Government Arts and Cultural Recovery Task Force, all of the words there. And like she's actually requested the prioritisation of the implementation of the universal basic income for artists. And we, of course, we welcome that, and it's obviously on your agenda, but have you at the NCFA or anybody at the NCFA, have you been part of those discussions and those recommendations?
Yeah, sure. So the NCFA was one of many, I think one of, I don't know, maybe 20 various different organisations that were involved in that task force. So Angela Dorgan, who's the chair of the NCFA, was on that task force, and all of the steering committee fed into the various different sections in the task force recommendations. And we absolutely, we've been talking about universal basic income for artists and arts workers for 4 years now. So it's not new, but what we were also doing was ensuring that all of the other, so like we spoke, when we were on that task force, we were talking to the other, we were talking to the sector, we were talking to the resource organisations, and we were taking all of that information and feeding it into the task force. So yeah, so like a lot of the things, all of the things I think in the task force we think are good things. Like you know, they can go further for sure, but all of the things that are in the task force, the NCFA had a hand in helping to shape.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you think that has the reception to the NCFA and the others who've been involved in these discussions with the government, has it been largely positive, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we we all want to say, and like a huge thank you to everyone in the sector for all of the support that they've been giving the National Campaign for the Arts. Like it has been really, really very positive, and we really feel the love, which is great. And it definitely makes it easier, because you know you're seeing the effects and you're seeing the change. And yeah, it's been a positive thing overall, and government certainly seems to be listening to it as much as possible, and you know, like we will try hold them to their promises, I guess.
That's it. Keep the pressure.
Keep the pressure.
Keep the pressure. Absolutely. Although it is nice to hear from somebody on the inside that those discussions are by and large positive.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
By and large.
Thank you so much, Owen. We actually now have a fantastic group of panellists joining us this evening. We have artist Peter Daly, we have actor and career coach for creatives Andrew Macklin, interim CEO, artistic director Niamh Crahor, and Neil Murray, co-director of the Abbey Theatre. Welcome one and all. Thank you so much for joining us on our debut episode of the new Stage Door Live.
Hi guys.
Thank you.
Hi, great to be here.
Good to be here.
Excellent. So first of all, we're all very much focused on reopening right now. And though there's been some mention of limited outdoor events, there's thus far been no clear plan of when we can reopen our venues. So what are the priorities for venues right now? What do we need to be reopening? Where should we be reopening? Neil, I'm going to come to you first.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Owen's pretty much set the groundwork there, I think. I mean, it's both encouraging and frustrating at the moment. There's definitely a sense that the theatre is going to reopen again relatively quickly. But as Owen said, we really need a date very quickly. You know, theatre is not a gallery where you can hang the work on the wall and have it pretty much ready to go at short notice. You know, we need to be back in the rooms making work. I mean, from the Abbey's perspective, I think, as we've tried to do all the way through the pandemic, is kind of go on the front foot and make a decision and try and hold it and stick to it. So we are making work. We're going to make a new show at the end of June in the Abbey. I can't tell you what it is yet, but I can tell. Well, I know what it is.
You're teasing us now, Neil.
I can't tell you, but I know. So we're going to make a show at the Abbey, and yes, we can live stream it, and we're making it with that in view. But we're also hoping that we may get word that we can play in front of a live audience as well. And if we're told that, we will. And with the theatre's ready to go, We did a pilot project in December working with Landmark. I mean, it was only one person at a time, and Owen was part of that as well. But that worked really successfully. And it just feels as though there's a short-term memory at play. I think theatre and the arts have shown that we can open safely, and it's frustrating when we see other sectors opening where I think we naturally throw health and safety at everything in the arts and theatre because we have to, because of how we work. And when I suddenly hear about groups of, all the sports coming back to life again very quickly, it's kind of like, please don't forget us. And even last week, when the Taoiseach was making his announcement, I was watching television going, they literally haven't mentioned the arts again. And I was literally on my phone about to ping a message to the department and complain when I got a phone call saying the minister's going to make an announcement. She's going to make an announcement and theatre will be part of it. And even then, it kind of got forgotten and it was cinema. Then it was cinema and theatre. And, and I think Catherine Martin has done a brilliant job, but she's genuinely fighting very hard for us, I think. But there's still just a sense of we just need to get it up the priority list. NCFA have done a fantastic job. I hope the Abbey have. We've been fighting hard to get word over. And it just feels that we're very close to it, but they just still need to really acknowledge what it takes for the theatre machine to get turning again.
I mean, this is it. We all know that everything that we do in theatre and live events, nothing happens without a risk assessment. That's just normal run-of-the-mill stuff that we do all of the time. I mean, when things first shut down, there was all of the jokes about getting all the stage managers to reopen the country, and there's real truth in that, And certainly it's very frustrating that we do often find ourselves being an afterthought, that we have to ask the question, but what about theatre? You haven't clarified that. Just to touch on something that Neil brought up there, Niamh, I'm going to come to you next around venues and reopening, because Axis as a venue has been one of the venues that's worked really, really hard to keep going and to make programmes throughout this year. As we tentatively take steps, hopefully, to reopening, what are your priorities here and what do you kind of see staying or going as we reopen?
I mean, for starters, I think a number of venues, and whether that's an art centre or a different space, I'm conscious that there's a multitude that comes under the roofs where we can welcome in audiences. We've done this before. We've reopened multiple times. As Neil touched upon, the capacity is there, the care, the caution, and the systems have been there and probably are more embedded into our practice. So for us, it is to start welcoming artists and audiences back in, possibly in quite a controlled environment depending on guidelines, but to build up those confident creative encounters. I'm very conscious of the fact that there are audience members and groupings who literally cannot wait to sit in that darkened room to feel the hush, that moment where everything hangs before it starts. But there are maybe people who will be a little bit more tentative, and we may need to gradually court and welcome that back in. And that goes for artists and technicians and crew as well. We have to be very, very mindful of giving those cohorts the time to kind of ease back up while we're doing all of that. And I can't wait to throw the doors open. There's an audience who've joined us online, and I'm probably, I'm speaking for Access. I'm certainly, I saw more work at the Abbey in the last year than, I may have done ordinarily. And for us, we don't want to leave that audience behind. They may actually never set foot in Access. So it is finding ways to maintain those relationships in a hybrid space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's been the few good things about this time has been the fact that access to quality arts and shows and everything for a lot of people has actually improved. And like you, Niamh, I would feel very strongly that I would hope that an element of that is maintained as we throw open the doors. And I mean, while, just to kind of follow on from that, a lot of places like Access have been in a position to, to program and to create events and all that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people, this past year has been really catastrophic. like when I think of, you know, actors and like all of those people who work backstage on the production side, the crew, the technicians, the stage managers, all of those, even, you know, ushers and front of house staff. You know, when I think about all of those freelancers, and some of whom are close friends of mine who haven't done a tap for the last year and are really struggling, as we start to reopen, Andrew, I'm going to come to you. What are these freelancers facing into? You know, dare we feel hopeful? Have we lost people, do you think, from the industry?
It's interesting. I'm sure possibly, but I would say as well that most of the people in the arts that I talk to, individual artists who I mainly work with, there's a level of passion and I guess insight about what they're doing that means that rarely comes up. What does come up more often in individual coaching sessions is more how can someone go about balancing what they want to do most with the reality that they're currently in. So I would say that it's less, or in general, there has been some wanting to pivot into another area of the arts, perhaps where the skills they've already made in theatre are equally as applicable. But I've not come across a lot of people who are saying this is just enough for me. Then again, I haven't spoken to everyone. But I would say that when it comes to thinking about the future, I would say that, you know, a really good starting point is to kind of make sense a little bit of where we've just been. So to take some time to reflect and give a meaning to what has just happened. You know, it's been quite a disorientating time. And by reflecting a little bit on what has happened in the past and giving it a bit of a clear identity for ourselves, that often brings a bit of insight into what we might need next. So if you were to take a bit of a narrative, I guess, approach to that, as happens sometimes in coaching, you'd look at, well, what is the last chapter? What is the year of COVID mean to me? What is the theme of that? And then differentiating that from the chapter that I'm currently in. So things might feel slightly different now, actually. Things are about to open. So how is that different? And then extending that narrative into, well, what comes next for me? And in doing that, the invitation would be to take on more of a sort of an authoring role. So what might I want to have happen next, essentially? Creating the context like that takes us out of the space of just the mad panic of not knowing where my career sits in a pandemic. So we're beginning to create a little bit of structure. So I would say that that's a really necessary place to begin with. So instead of running ahead of ourselves, and often there's a sense of pressure that comes with this idea that my career should be at a much higher place. And I'd say as well, another perspective to use that can be really useful is to look at where you are now in the context of where you want to be. You could look back at the last year and say, well, that was 10 steps back for me. Everything I wanted to do in my career and in my professional life was, you know, ripped from under me. Looking at it from the perspective of where you ultimately want to go in your career, it might allow you to find a slightly different meaning for it. So maybe it was a year or a time when actually you learned a little bit about how much you genuinely really wanted to be involved in the arts, and you realized a different level of passion, that actually this is a certain step for you, irrespective of how difficult it might be. So I would say that there definitely has to be hope. And in relation to hope, I think a little bit like Owen was saying about the National Campaign for the Arts, looking for best outcome, I think we do need to take a bit of a cognitive leap about the future and imagine what the ideal is for ourselves. Not necessarily saying that's going to happen overnight, but what it does create is it brings up a bit more information about what we actually want, which if we become a little bit too problem focused, we neglect some of that information. We get lost in the idea of we get fixated on one problem and can often with that ignore some of the other possibilities. So to get, I guess, more resources and more options open for ourselves, that's a space to begin to investigate and explore for yourself. And within that, really briefly, I'd add two things that a lot, and that's just what's the emotional experience you want to have as an artist. Quite often people leave a lot of careers outside of the arts and in it because although they might be meeting certain career goals, their felt experience isn't an enjoyable one. So by questioning preemptively, what do I want to do emotionally? How do I want to feel? Do I want to be curious about the work that I'm doing? And if I do, how can I bring more curiosity into that? That and maybe, I guess, some lifestyle ideas as to how much do I want to work? How much do I need to earn? So some of these practical things preemptively looking at. But yeah, we definitely need to take that cognitive leap with hope in imagining what is to come in order to help us get there.
Some fantastic insights there, Andrew. And I'm going to come back to that subject on the learning from the last year. I think that's really, really important. But Peter, I want to come to you next. Do you have anything to add to that in relation to, you talk a lot with actors, particularly around finances. How is it at the coalface of that at the moment as we face into hopefully reopening?
Well, I was just going to say that Andrew was so articulate, eloquent and hopeful, and it doesn't reflect at all how I'm feeling. I mean, I'm inspired by what Andrew said, but I'm also feeling terribly grumpy about the whole situation.
We've got the comedy and tragedy. It's great. It's perfect balance.
I know. I love everything he said. And as I sat there, I went, this is brilliant. Andrew's brilliant. He's thinking, he's saying all the right things. I'm just not going to say that. I think it's fucking terrible. It's an awful time. And if anybody's feeling miserable and looking out the window going, this is pointless and I should have done something else, I'm with you all the way. I really am. But we won't give it up. Because if we were going to give it up, we would have given it up a million years ago. True. But if anybody's feeling terrible, I'm right there with you. It's a funny time, isn't it? I do speak a lot to artists about finance and about the PUP and about this and that. I think, to be honest, to be slightly more hopeful than I was 10 seconds ago, the PUP has been a little bit of a lifeline to some people. It's given an amount of consistency to people where they can kind of go, right, I'm getting 300 or 350 each week for the next whatever till the 30th of June at least. Now I can make plans around it. But still, it's kind of to kind of decide at a certain point in time, I am an artist, I am an actor, or I'm a stage manager, I'm this or I'm that. And then to find that a full year has been taken out of your working calendar, it's devastating. It really does, and at a time when things are very hard with trying to buy houses and everything else, it's a really tough time. And with the greatest respect for the people on this panel and in all the people in the arts who work and who have full-time salaries, it really has thrown that huge disparity up. And the people on this panel have been, who are on full-time salaries, have been incredibly encouraging and artist focused always about that, as everybody. It's not a vilification and it's not a personal thing, but it has kind of thrown up the idea that there are fixed costs within this industry, and those fixed costs get funded first out of whatever funding is going, and then the art gets made on top of that. Now, the fixed cost is the art as well. It's not as simple as one person is this and so therefore they're not that. It's not at all. But when you look back at the last year or so, different things pop up, and it's no harm to have the chance to really look at how we do things and see if there's ways to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stick with you for the moment, Peter, because you've just brought up PUP, and I think that's such an issue for all of us at the moment. And we know that it's set to expire in June, and there has been some chatter from government acknowledging that some industries will be slower to reopen and that it'll be a question of phasing it out rather than stopping suddenly. There's been no clarity at all in how this relates to the theatre industry. What are your thoughts and concerns around this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think I'm quite hopeful that there'll be some sort of an extension to it, particularly for people who work in the arts whose industries simply can't reopen. We've no indication, as Neil and Owen and Neve have said, no indication of when theatres are going to get to open. So it's very unfair to knock people off what they're surviving on at a time when they can't physically go back to work. So I'm hopeful that something will be done. I think that Owen and everyone at the National Campaign for the Arts have been incredible, absolutely incredible in fighting for all of what we need to survive at this time. I think if anybody on this call watching this is not already a member of National Campaign for the Arts, not already a subscriber to their emails, get subscribed now. And yeah, I'm hopeful that, I do think Catherine Martin is a fantastic Minister for Culture. I think she's brilliant. I think she has our backs, and will do her best to make sure that the support is continuing as long as it needs to continue.
Absolutely fantastic. Owen, can I throw the same question to you around the PUP and it finishing and phasing from an NCFA perspective? What are the biggest concerns on that for you at the moment, do you think?
I mean, the biggest concern is that the PUP and the EWSS disappears before the industry can fully reopen and reopen at full capacity. Because we're looking at venues being able to open at a capacity of 50, but like that doesn't make the work necessarily financially viable. And so like it's a complicated thing. Like we need the extension for the PUP and the EWSS to be there until the industry is able to open at full capacity and be working back at full capacity.
Absolutely. So I suppose on all fronts then the priority is really pushing for that clarification.
Yeah.
And applying the pressure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And just to come back to, you know, Catherine Martin and the universal basic income and all of that, which we welcome. We know, for example, from our reading that they're suggesting €325 per week, but there's been very little else clarified around the UBI in terms of who's eligible, how do you qualify, will there be an expectation of output, for example. What are the priorities on that do you think we should be focusing on? And I know we touched on it earlier, but just to get into it a little bit more.
So from the NCFA's point of view, we've been largely talking to Social Justice Ireland and looking at kind of different ideas or like different models that have been in use elsewhere. It's really complicated. The more I look at it, the more we talk about it. It's really complicated. So like, you know, if we would be looking at artists and arts workers, exactly how you define that, we will be looking at, you know, where they're talking about it, or the people that they are looking at kind of managing that would be revenue. So it will be opt-in. It would be, if it was 325, it would be a guaranteed 325 a week, and then whatever, and untaxed. And then everything after that that you earn would be taxed as normal. So that's the idea. Like it's not means tested. It's just a guaranteed. You are getting this money, and you can work. And like, you know, every other pilot that's been run around the world, it has shown that, you know, one of the fears that people have is if you get the universal basic income, or if you get a basic income, you are going to stop working. And actually every single pilot that's been run around the world has shown that that isn't the case, that people want to earn a little bit more, that people want to work, that actually, you know, work as a way of kind of giving ourselves an identity in who we are, and giving ourselves a purpose. So like those kind of various different things. And you know, and I think we're looking at the art sector, because as we see it, a huge amount of freelance artists and arts workers. So like myself as a theatre maker, as a theatre director, I would say I get paid for about 60% of the work that I do, because up until the point where I'm applying for funding applications, I'm doing development, I'm doing idea research, I'm thinking about who I want to work with, I'm developing all of those ideas, and then I'm able to bring it forward to start applying for money. But I've already done about 40% of the work before I've done an application. So like the UBI would kind of help address that, and help address some of the things that Peter was talking about, where there's a difficult divide where freelance artists and arts workers aren't getting paid for a lot of the work. And actually, basically, that work is being subsidized by people's time. And it's being, and that subsidy is kind of an awkward element.
I mean, TheatreMaker exists because of the pandemic unemployment payment. You know, we were all, as a group of theatre makers here, suddenly without work. And we were on the PUP, and that is how TheatreMaker was brought into existence and why we're sitting here today. So I absolutely take your point of that, that if people have that steady income coming in, like, we are going to make work. We can't help it. It's you know.
Yeah, it lets people kind of imagine, like, and think bigger, because there's a small sense of security that that allows people to take risks.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, some of the things in the pandemic has shown us that actually people are really excited about the possibility of taking risks if they feel it's worth it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of following on from that and going back to something that Andrew talked about earlier, and I'm going to come to you on this, Neil, around all of the reflection and learning and how we can adapt and do things differently within the industry over the last year. How do you think, Neil, we hold on to those lessons and implement these changes as we move forward?
I think there's a few things. First of all, I just want to touch on that last point about the UBI as well. You know, I think it's worth remembering, you know, the UBI should just be a safety net for people. You know, it's €18,000 a year. In any other industry, that would be the lowest rung that you would start on. And that's still more than a lot of artists earn. And I say this from a position of privilege as director of a national theatre on a good salary. And I do hear what Peter says, and I do genuinely feel that pain of artists. I think what this year has done is highlight that fragility of how all our brilliant artists, A, are underpaid, and B, walk tightrope between survival. And UBI is just the safety net that allows people to survive and then build on it. And like Owen says, the notion that people will go, oh, great, I've got UBI, I don't need to work again. If you stop most people in the street and says, are you happy to live on €18,000 a year in Ireland? Fucking good luck, that's not enough. But it's a safety net. It means that at least people can survive. Then we have to build on that by creating more work for artists. Sorry, that's my rage out of the way.
Go for it, all of the rage.
No, to go back to your points, I mean, I think the two really big learnings for me is, one is that fragility of artists, and the fact that we work in a system, and I'm a beneficiary of this and have been most of my work in life, where the organizations are kind of guaranteed survival and the artist isn't. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to learn from that. We have to learn, and we have to address it. And I don't know how yet, but I want to, and that's a big challenge moving forward. I think the second big learning is something Niamh mentioned earlier as well, which is that we've suddenly found a way to reach an audience in a way we'd never envisaged before. If you'd said to me, less than a year ago, or just over a year ago, well, actually 350,000 people are going to watch the Abbey's work, and 46% of them won't even be in Ireland. There's no way you could have worked out how to do that. So whilst of course we're thrilled about the possibility of going back to live work and being in a room with people and that sound that Niamh described, and my favorite sound in the world is a tannoy backstage in a theatre just before the show goes up. I can tell you the number of people in the audience by the sound of the tannoy. I'm like the hangman handshake, guessing the weight. I can tell you what the audience is by the sound. So we're all looking forward to that, but at the same time, I don't want to lose that 150,000 people who don't even live in Ireland who've watched the Abbey. So we need to find a way that not only that they can watch the theatre, but actually that they can help sustain the theatre, because it's, of course, a lot of this has been great. We'll do it for free, and it's free to view, and that's been amazing, and we need to keep that going. But I think we also need to find a way that economically they help us, going back to Peter's point, that we help sustain the artists. And it has to be, we have to join up things in a way we've never even considered before. So there are really good learnings, but the pain and the hardship is very clear, and that's the first thing we have to address.
Absolutely. I think you've touched on something really interesting there. And Niamh, I'm going to come to you next. Related to this, we're in a really interesting moment right now. And it's actually one of the reasons we're here, is where we've got this digital platform all of a sudden, and we're reaching audiences that we've never reached before. And I suppose moving forward, it's a question of how do we retain that but get back to our live shared experience. And I mean, Access over the last year has done loads of these digital platform events, and it's been fantastic. So as we move forward, Niamh, kind of what would your visions be for how we move forward, kind of retaining these things but opening our doors at the same time, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, that's I suppose some of it's been touched on before, but just to go back to artists and the UBI, and we've been talking a lot about theatre in the traditional sense and audiences. But we all know that artists aren't just theatre makers who perform at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night to a set amount of people. We have artists in schools. We are working with the HSE, with artists to resource young people to explore mental health and their creativity. Our artists are ways of doing things. Name any system, process, person that needs an experience or needs joy, needs healing, needs a moment's pause, and always you can trace back to artists as the answer for that. So, and I know that there's organisations all over the country who've had online programming, but they've also been maybe doing an awful lot offline as well, and perhaps that hasn't been platformed as much. And there's certainly been an awful lot less of it happening. So moving forward, I'm really, really interested in welcoming people back in. I'm really, really interested in maintaining those relationships online. But I'm also very interested in finding ways to return to confident creative encounters, especially for the groups and individuals who lost out first, or who lost most due to the pandemic, for whom the experiences that some of us take for granted are not as accessible, or there's way more barriers to them. So those spaces will always need artists at the heart of them. So the more, and I'd echo Neil's sentiments about being in a position of privilege. If we don't keep that focus on those people and the artists while we're looking to auditoria and packed stages, we'll lose something. And there's been loads of small funding rounds, like the Agility Award, and I'm delighted to see that there will be more of those. But it's not an awful lot of money. And those awards will plant a ton of seeds. And I'm very, very interested in what happens next for those artists and those people who were awarded. And if it's to invest time in developing practice, great. But the next steps really interest me. And that's something that we'll need to look at in 5 years' time. And going back to Owen's point and Neil's point, and Peter's as well, that won't happen if we don't maybe shift the model a little bit in favour of the artist.
Absolutely, Niamh, I couldn't agree more. And I just wonder, and I'm going to throw this open to the floor, because we know the government has announced, what is it, like 135 million or something that it's giving to the Arts Council. And there's, there's questions and topics that are being brought up in several, in conversations and in various articles around how that funding will be disseminated. And one of the things that caught my eye was things like the suggestion of multi-annual funding. And I wonder if any of you have thoughts on that idea of making that a thing here, because it's a thing in other places, in other countries and around Europe, so that particularly the bigger organisations and venues, if they can get funding, over the course and be guaranteed that funding for, say, 4 or 5 years, that they don't have to keep doing those applications every year. You talked about it earlier, Owen, how much time is spent, we all spend on those funding applications. I wonder, do any of you have thoughts on that? And do you think something like that should be what we're looking at? That's a way to go?
Well, it already exists in that, the Abbey traditionally has been on a 3-year funding round. We get 3 years guaranteed funding. You still have to apply within it, unfortunately. So the bureaucracy still hits you. You still have to come with justify. But so that exists. I mean, I think in terms of the dissemination of the money, this is probably contentious. But I do think the organizations and the buildings have a role to play, in that they have the infrastructure that can get that money out. But what they have to do is get the money out. What the buildings can't do is take the money and not do the work. If we're going to get the money, we've got to get it out quickly to artists over the next few years. And that means maybe changing the kind of model we do, but also doing projects much speedier than we have in the past. But I do think it's where the benefit of the artist and the organization can come together, I think. But that's going to take a shift, particularly from the organizations, to work in a different way. But in terms of that, the fixed term funding is something that does exist, not for that many companies, but it does. So that model is already there.
Owen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, ensuring that the Arts Council is going to get the money. I think the Arts Council are the right people to be disseminating the money because of the arm's length principle that exists there, which means that it's not who gets it is on a kind of merit basis, I guess, and peer reviewed. I mean, there are interesting things that are going on. So, like the Mermaid Art Centre out in Bray are doing this associate artist pilot where they're bringing on artists onto their salary. I think it's 4 artists they're bringing on. That's really interesting because it's Yeah, that's a really interesting model, I guess. I know that Praxis, who are the new artists union, are looking at working with the Arts Council to change the funding application to make it easier and less time consuming for artists. Now, like at the same time, like I understand that like if you're going to get money and a lot of money, often like it is important that the funding application and that it's rigorous, but it is a balance because at the moment it's a huge amount of time and to some extent it's an impediment. But I think there's also other things like, you know, we have a huge amount of theatres all around the country, and very often we have like they support artists or they work with artists to create project applications or arts grant applications, and I don't know, like I think there's loads. I think we need to start thinking about different ways of doing it. Like, you know, do they get a little bit more money to bring artists on and become, you know, kind of producing houses in some way, or like do we only have really kind of 2.5 producing houses in Ireland? We have the Abbey, the Gate, and then there's and then the Everyman does some, but like it's hard. It's particularly hard for freelance artists because, like I know as a freelance artist myself, like I don't have a business bank account. So when I get project funding, I don't want it, you know, 80 grand sitting in my bank account to be disseminated to other artists or people on the team. And, you know, even in a simple sense, like, you know, those buildings being able to like help with that stuff, like that helps as a thing. Like it's a really simple thing. And like, you know, like I have the idea, but like having help with the infrastructure of getting that money and like managing that money, because the producing and the managing side of things is, like as Peter was saying, like it's part of the art. Like it's just the part I'm not necessarily as good at. So kind of having help with those elements would be, you know, I think there's loads of things that we could be doing better.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we, like, the conversation starts to be geared towards those. I think that would really help.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any further thoughts on that topic before we... I know I'm getting shouted at for time in my ear, so does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to that? Okay, great. I think we've kind of said it all, really, haven't we? Lots of discussions to be had. Before we finish up, Neil, I just have one final question for you. As you came to Ireland and to the Abbey several years ago as a foreigner, so to speak, and in that time you've witnessed a huge amount of change and actually been a part of some of that change in the theatre industry here. And I just wonder now, as you're, you know, getting ready to take your leave from the Abbey, I wonder if you could reflect for a moment for us on that time here, and what do you hope your legacy will be, if any, and what do you think are the biggest challenges facing us as an industry in this moment of transition?
Gosh, wow, you put me on the spot. No, I suppose, you know, when I came over with Graham McLaren, we felt we were responding to an appetite for change at the Abbey, that the people wanted to see a different Abbey, and we did that. And at times that was controversial, and it wasn't what everybody wanted. But I'm proud of what we've done. I think it's a very different Abbey theatre. I think you know, the Abbey is a lightning rod, and it always has been and always will be. But I'm proud of what we've achieved in terms of opening up the organisation, and particularly actually in the last year, in 2020. I think we reacted quickly, and I hope in a way that showed, you know, our love for artists and our respect for artists. And I think the challenges moving forward is going to be how do the buildings and companies interact much better with freelance artists in a way that we haven't really thought about before. Because I think this has really highlighted, I've used this word before, the fragility of the sector, and there needs to be new ways of working. But no, so I hope the legacy is a more open, diverse national theatre, I suppose, is what I would hope it'll be remembered for.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to you, Neil, and to Peter, Andrew, and Niamh for joining us, and of course, for joining us virtually, and of course, our first ever in-house guest, Owen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you all, and honestly, I feel like these are conversations that could go on for hours. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I sit here at this moment in time, I can't help but feel so incredibly privileged to be in this position. Though the last few days here have been chaotic and thrilling and exhausting in equal measure, it's been such a joy for the TheatreMaker team to actually work together in person, and even more so to be in a building. This last year has been difficult and painful and challenging for everyone. And quite frankly, it's almost impossible to vocalize the experience, and it may be many years before we're actually able to accurately put into words the collective trauma of COVID-19 and its impact. In tonight's show, we spoke a lot about moving forward and moving on, and that's something we're all keen to do. However, I can't help but think about those earlier conversations this time last year, when our industry ground to a halt and we were all faced with the question, what am I worth? Those first weeks were filled with fear and terror, as so many of us felt our careers stripped away overnight, as we knew that our industry, our livelihoods, our passion, so often an afterthought, useful only as long as it served our tourist industry. It fell into that category of unessential. There followed months of uncertainty and anger and frustration and fatigue as we fought every day to be seen and heard. So many individuals and organisations worked tirelessly on our behalf to ensure that our voices and concerns were heard at every level. Time and again, we had to defend our place in the world. We had to force those in power to see our worth, to place real value on our work. For many of us, it's not always an easy thing to stand up and say, my work is valuable, I am of value to society. But the last year has forced us to do just that. We've all reflected on ourselves this year, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. And it's very easy for me sitting here in this position to be positive. For many others who've not had any work in the last year and no prospect of work in the coming months, it is much, much harder. So it is our hope here at TheatreMaker that if we take just one thing from the last year, it's that the arts are essential. They are of value. They should not ever be an afterthought, but a core part of our society. That everyone, each individual who brings art to the world, from stage managers to technicians to performers, has worth and value and should be given the recognition they deserve. We started a conversation this time last year with Stage Door Live, and we're so privileged to continue that conversation now. We hope that we never forget what we have learned this past year, and that you, watching at home, will join that conversation and keep it going, so that all our voices and values can be heard. We will see you on Monday for Irish Theatre This Week, and 2 weeks from today for Stage Door Live. Thank you and good night.